Hi, I'm Gravity Goldberg, and I'm here with my colleague Heather Frank, and we are going to talk about how to plan a strategy. So, Heather, we are both self-proclaimed nerds, right? We are so nerdy. We went on to get doctorates in education.
Mhm.
Congratulations, Dr. Frank, recently.
Thank you.
Um, and that doesn't mean that we have not had missteps as teachers ourselves. And one of the things that I think about a lot, those nights when you think about those first years teaching and you were like, I did my best, right? One of the things was how often it seemed like I would just tell kids, so today you're going to do this, like today you're going to find the main idea, like everyone know what the main idea is, and mixed looks on their faces, and then
Mhm.
sending kids off without ever actually showing them how do you actually figure out what main ideas are. Have you had similar experiences, Heather?
Yes, there's one memory that I cannot escape from in which I was teaching, or so I thought, teaching how to write an ending to a narrative. And I didn't teach the how, I just told. And I remember conferring with a writer and realizing when I walked away from that conference that he had no idea how to do that because I never showed him how to do it.
Yeah. And I think like that's part of it. As much as we study, as much as we are super into our craft and into the content, sometimes the hardest part of being a teacher is slowing ourselves down, right? And getting clear on like, but how do you actually do that
Mhm.
as a reader or as a writer or a conversationalist, and making that clear to kids, right? Making that clear to our students. So that's what we want to talk about today.
Mhm.
So, we want to plan strategies, not for every single thing we do, but really like in a purposeful way. And so, one of those is when we're teaching something that's really new for students or something really complex. So, that something new sometimes is simple, but it's new to that age and that group of students. And so, we want to make sure that we are teaching them the how. We also want to think about planning a strategy when we wanted students to be able to go back and try something independently. And both those examples we shared, Heather, like there was an expectation, not that they would just do it with us, but they would go back on their own as readers or writers and try it out. And I think also we want to plan a strategy for students when we think, gosh, it would really help them if they knew the steps rather than have them try to figure it out themselves, that we want to just be really direct in our instruction around that. So there's always more than one way to do anything as a teacher, and planning a strategy is certainly another one of those. So here's one way that we find ourselves using a lot. So first we ask ourselves, what goal do I have in mind for my students? And that's really important, that a strategy is aligned to something bigger that we want students to be able to do. The second thing we do is I actually do the reading or writing myself. And so like I have my own notebooks, I have my own books, and I don't ask students to do anything that I haven't tried myself, because I really don't know how to teach a strategy if I haven't done it. And as I'm doing that myself, I'm paying attention to my process. So some of the things that happen really naturally, like decoding words, I don't have to think as an adult proficient reader how I do that. But in this case, I slow myself down enough so that I can pay attention to my steps if I'm going to teach a strategy to students. And then the third thing is I take that process I just paid attention to and I actually list the steps. But I don't just list the steps and what did I do, but what a reader or a writer could do. So I frame it in a way, not I do this, I do that, but a reader might do this, and then a reader next would do that. So that it's framed in a way that's actionable for all readers or writers, and not just a summary of what I did as a reader myself. So let's look at some examples, Heather.
Sure. So, one example of a reading strategy is something that we might teach when we want to engage readers in choosing a book that not only can they read, but that they want to read. So, Gravity and I went through this thinking ourselves in terms of what we do when we choose a book that we can and we want to read. And we broke that down into one strategy that readers might use. Again, like Gravity said, this isn't the only strategy that readers use when they choose books they want to read, but this may be one way to frame it for the students in the class. So first, we might list a few books that we've read and that we loved. Next, we might ask ourselves, what did I love about these books? And when we're asking ourselves that question, we might consider the genre or the type of book that we're reading. Maybe there's a particular author that we really love to read all their books. Maybe there's something particular particularly interesting about the setting or the characters, or even the lesson that we gleaned from that book. And the last thing we might do is just simply look for other books that are similar. We also wanted to break down an example of a writing strategy. And so at most grade levels, at some point in the writing process, writers are generating ideas about topics they want to write about. So we thought we could focus in on persuasive writing for this topic and really be clear about what a strategy might look like for writers generating a list of persuasive topics that they have strong feelings about. So this is just one way to frame it. We know a lot of times we might default to thinking about something that's negative in the world or in a particular place that we want to change for the better. We decided to put a spin on it and instead frame it in terms of what's something that we really love and want to continue to spread. So one strategy that writers might use to generate this list is first to ask ourselves, where do I spend my time? What places do I like to visit? Do I like to go to? Second, we might picture that place in our minds and think about all the things we love about that particular place. And finally, we might choose an action that we want others to do or to take with regard to that particular place. And Gravity and I included on this slide a quick chart that maybe in the younger grades as a teacher you might use to generate some ideas together. It might also be a way that students generate ideas in their writing notebooks in the upper grades. And again, this is just one example for how a writer might generate some ideas. So we wanted to leave you with a few tips that we find useful when we engage in this work of creating a strategy for readers and writers. Have your own notebook and book beside you while you're doing this work. Gravity showed us a couple of her notebooks. Having that with us is so important so that we can actually do the work ourselves as readers and writers. Sticky notes, we always want those by our side because they are so useful in jotting down those steps and being really explicit with ourselves. Like Gravity and I did, feel free to try it with a buddy, right? Brainstorm ideas with someone else. I find myself always turning to my thinking partners, whether it's Gravity, a colleague, or even my husband, and saying, does this sound right? Does this sound like what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to teach? And most importantly, remember that there's always more than one strategy for a goal or a teaching point. There's not one right strategy. It's a right strategy if you're choosing to do it because that's what your students need. So we just wanted to thank you for joining us today. We are grateful for your partnership and we're looking forward to partnering with you in the future.
Thank you.